All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Jones. For those of you who don't know me, I've been running Lustre support for nearly sorry. So, as I said, I'm Peter Jones, and for those of you who don't know me, I've been running Lustre support for nearly 5 years now. First at CFS, then Sun Oracle, and now Whamcloud. And I'm going to talk to you today about the sort of Lustre community efforts towards Lustre releases, and I think it's really appropriate that the first sort of main presentation at this event does have a community focus, because, as Galen just said, this is the first event run entirely by the community, and certainly from what I've seen so far, the organization and the facilities have been excellent, and I think that's great news. Seeing that the attendance on last year's LUG is up again, that's really encouraging news. So. Sorry, yes. Okay, so can everyone hear okay now? Yeah, okay. So, first of all, why does the Lustre community need to be involved in Lustre releases? So, late in last year, there was a change in strategy at Oracle, and Lustre was switched from active development into sustaining mode. So, what that means is, while they can, intend to continue to honor existing support obligations, there's no engineering effort being put into any future releases of Lustre. So this is a really big deal for the community, because this means that there's no active work going on the master branch, which is where all future Lustre feature development has been targeted for some time. So, clearly, if anything was going to happen with Lustre going forward, it's up to the community to do that. So first, to touch on 1.8 releases. So last year at LUG, I spoke about the relative quality between 1.6 and 1.8 based on sort of feedback we'd had with support from early adopters from 1.8 and people who had upgraded from 1.6. At that time, the vast majority of sites were still running 1.6 releases. But the 1.6 end of life was rapidly approaching, and I know that many people were quite trepidatious about the prospect of upgrading, but the feedback we'd had from people who had made the jump already was that 1.8 was much more stable than earlier Lustre releases, and I think a year on, I think that's been proven. The vast majority of sites now have upgraded to 1.8, and the reports I hear are one or two issues that we've had to work through, but largely things are running much more stably in production. And I think that has been testimony. The most positive thing from the sort of period of active development at Sun and Oracle was that we were given the sort of free rein to really invest in doing things right, and we did have access to far greater sort of test infrastructure than we'd ever had previously, and in particular the Hyperion test cluster, which is a multi-vendor consortium, but is hosted at Livermore, and being able to run Lustre releases at scale on an ongoing basis, before they go out the door and people are trying to run them in production, has just been the single most influential thing on improving the quality of Lustre. So, I mean, going back 3 years, there was no shortage of people to tell you how performant Lustre was and the great results they had, but it was a bit harder to find someone to tell you how stable it was, and I think that's really changed, and I know that no one wants to see us go back to lose that ground that's been made in terms of the quality. So anyway, as for 1.8 releases, so I was chatting with the guys from Oracle last night, and so I understand that the implications for 1.8 are that Oracle has standard policy that they anything that they have active support paying customers for, they continue to make maintenance releases. So their plans are still to produce 1.8 releases. So in light of that, Whamcloud has been continuing to push fixes upstream to Oracle for things that come in from our 1.8 customers, so that everyone can still benefit from that work. though we are still making sure we have the capability to produce our own 1.8 releases, if our schedules don't mesh. So we're covered. Moving on to 2.1, or the 2x release in general. So there's no work of this nature going on at Oracle anymore. So there hasn't been any check-ins to the Oracle Git since the tail end of last year. It was very clear that something needed to be done. Clearly, all the stakeholders in the Lustre community knew that and needed to do something. The question was, what? So, early this year, I checked in, with various stakeholder groups. I talked to representatives from each of the community organizations, EOFS, HPCFS, and OpenSFS. I also spoke to the folk at Zyratex, who of course have a very substantial Lustre engineering team there. And it was very positive feedback to sort of doing some kind of collaboration on this effort, just to sort of really show that Lustre is still here, there is still active development, and to not let, how we organize things in the long term delay us, getting the work that's almost complete done and providing us with a stable baseline. So the intention of the 2.1 release had been primarily as a sort of consolidation and stabilization release. After 2.0 only came out last July, it had been a very long time coming. Much more testing had occurred on 2.0 than any previous Lustre release ever, but still it was a major. A lot of re-engineering went in under the covers on 2.0, and definitely we know that there's going to be work to be done to really bring it in line with 1.8 in terms of stability, and also to really verify all the all the use cases on 1.8, and to make sure that we at least match or preferably exceed the performance on those. So the arrangement we've came up with is that we would use Whamcloud's infrastructure for this release, and then defer how we would organize things longer term. And I think the key thing in how, coming to that agreement was the changes we made to how contributions would be accepted. So, Lustre has always accepted contributions from third-party organizations, and that's, brought great benefit over the years. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, CEA had developed the OST pools feature for 1.8.0, entire feature. And Livermore made some performance improvements to recovery, which were greatly beneficial, and that went into 1.8.2. And all of these were done under a contributor agreement, which signed exclusive copyright to the copyright holder. So, the position we're in, the copyright holder was not interested in participating, and so we basically moved to a model more aligned to the arrangements used by the kernel itself, so that there's no copyright assignment, and as a result, no single organization owns the copyright of Lustre. So no one is in a position to be able to alter the licensing at all. So I think this is really this has been the key thing in getting a consensus, and I think this is good news for Lustre long term. The resulting release, no one owns the copyright, and any subsequent releases based on 2.1, it will be the same thing. So as for the scope of 2.1, so as I said earlier on, the primary focus of 2.1 was a sort of consolidation release, with a view to giving something that was, those running stably in production on 1.8 could realistically think about upgrading to. So while it was tempting, given the sort of this release was due out late last year, given the slip in schedule, it could have been possible to include some extra features where the ongoing development was now more advanced. But we decided against that because we thought it was more important to have this baseline release out sooner rather than risk delaying it by scope creep. So the one exception we did make here was, Red Hat 6 had been in the initial plans for 2.1, but had been de-scoped because of the delays with that release coming out. But because of the timing now, Red Hat 6 was out. We decided that that was the one thing that was worth making an exception for, so we have re-included that in scope for this release. So moving on to the logistics. So we decided that the best thing to do was to use this sort of well-proven model that's been used for Lustre release for some time, of having a release manager who handles the day-to-day project management type activities, coupled with a tech lead who basically handles the gatekeeping duties and is the sort of central discussion point for any technical matters. So I volunteered to be the release manager. I had served in this capacity for, I think it was 13 releases of 1.6 and 1.8. So I'm pretty, shrewd idea of what's required to get Lustre releases out the door. And I'm working on this release with Oleg Droykin, who is probably a name that many of you know. Very, seasoned Lustre engineer. Been doing some, over the years, development at Oak Ridge, and involved in, he's been speaking at previous lugs and is indeed talking at this lug on Thursday. And we have had, I have some metrics I threw together when I ahead of the slide deadline, and I know that these are an understatement of the level of participation. We actually just very recently, actually Vitaly Vertman of Zyrotex made the suggestion we moved the call to a slightly earlier time slot to accommodate those from Europe, and that's actually been very positive, and we've had a number of extra organizations who hadn't previously been attending the weekly calls able to participate, so that's been very, very good news. Getting ahead of myself there. Okay, so the current status. So of course the question everyone's wondering is, when is 2.1 going to be out? So when I put these slides together, I fully expected to be able to give you a pretty good estimate on that. However, unfortunately, there's still a blocker that's on the critical path to that, which is being able to do some scale Red Hat 6 testing. So, the latest estimate we have is that will be available on Hyperion mid-April, so pretty soon. And if that happens, we're still very much on track, I would say, for a summer release. If anyone has in the audience or reviewing afterwards is able to help, please contact me via the mailing list or directly, and I would love to hear from you. We know just from the sort of modest size scale testing that we have been able to do for Red Hat 6 that the newer kernel has got all kinds of subtle quirks to it from a Lustre perspective to adjust to, and so there have been a lot of issues, and we know that always there's things that come out during larger scale testing that you just don't see when you're testing a modest scale. So we know there's going to be stuff to deal with. We don't know what it is yet. At the moment, we have been having some really great feedback through our partner Ball with from the Terra 100 installation of them running in production, but of course that's a production site, so we're not allowed to experiment with fixes. And each while we are sort of moving forward, if you've been following along on the list, seeing the blockers cleared off week on week, but we still each iteration just takes that much longer when you're working within production constraints. So once we're able to have a testing option where we can really push this at scale and really also verify fixes, then we'll really accelerate this and have a much better idea the scope of what's the work that's required and how long it's going to take. So in terms of keeping abreast of the progress, I encourage you to follow along on the mailing list. The volume on the mailing list is maybe 2 or 3 emails a week, so it's not going to kill your inbox. Or you can just go and view online and review the messages on an ad hoc basis if you prefer. But there's the details, and the weekly calls as well. If you just want to dial in and just listen in, they're normally about half an hour, and that's just fine. If that's what you'd like to do. And talking about the weekly meetings, I did want to make a point of thanking Shay at OpenSFS, who has been volunteering to attend the calls and takes notes for me. So, thanks to her, the minutes that go out after the meeting are actually much fuller than they would be if it was just relying on my scribbled notes. So, thank you to her. And so, going on to future, beyond 2.1, clearly we need to come up with a longer-term working arrangements that work for all the stakeholders. I know that discussions have been ongoing, and and I'm sure there will be many more discussions on this topic this week. So I don't know quite what those will end up being yet, but clearly it has to be something that works for all the stakeholders. But I do know that Whamcloud will be producing future 2x releases. We have NRE development work in progress for customers, and we need to have a delivery mechanism for those, and releases that we can support our customers on. So, there is a roadmap for those. It's sort of outside the scope of this presentation. I think Brent's got it in his presentation, and that roadmap's also on the Whamcloud wiki if you wanted to look. But anyway, just to sort of summarize, so basically for 1.8, we've got Oracle still will be producing releases for that code line. I mean, from my perspective, I know most sites are running stably, and there probably isn't a pressing need for most people to consider, an upgrade if they're running 1.8 or anything, 1.8.3 onwards. For 2.1, expect the release to be out this summer, and we expect to have more precise details as to when that will be in the coming weeks. And 2x releases beyond that, that's still to be determined, and we'll see. So, okay, I think that's everything I have. Does anyone have any questions other than when is 2.1 coming out?
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you get copies of all the presentations somehow? Yeah, the presentations will be linked off the Web 2011 website, posted over. There'll be a bit of a delay as we push those to our admin to get our web admin to get them posted. But everything will be available there.
Okay. Anything else? Hi.
On your last slide, you mentioned that core Lustre will be open source. How do you define core?
Did I say core Lustre? Well,
On the last slide, I think it.
Oh, in the text. Okay. How core Lustre? Well, anything under the Lustre tree in Git. I mean. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a point. I mean I said that in the text, but just all these tools that are being used for the 2.1 release are entirely open. So you can go, you can look at the Whamcloud Git and you can just see exactly, who has, which patches have been landed and who created them, and the even ahead of them being landed, on Gerrit, which is the review tool, there's proposed patches, and they all have a reference number to the Jira ticket, the issue tracking system, which again is open. And so you can see, patches and how they've fared in building and their inspections, and comments from other reviewing engineers as to whether what needs to be improved before the patch could be considered ready for landing. So yes, I mean, all keeping a track of the blockers. That one thing I should have mentioned there as well is. On Jira there is a query that you can use, and so you can just dynamically every time you go into Jira you can see an update as to what the current blocker list is. So if you go under manage filters from the dashboard and click on popular, that you'll see the Lustre 2.1 blockers given as an option. You can set that up so it just fires every time you go into Jira. So that's what I do, and just to really keep on top of what's going on. Galen? Right.
How does that work?
Well, so the process we've always used to date is that we'd have the person who has the official last call on that is the tech lead for the release. So they have the scope of the releases, which is the defining criteria, and So anything which is a severe issue on that, like a crash or anything like that, that's a natural blocker. So it only really gets to be questionable when there's sort of more of a a niche feature, maybe something that's turned off by default, and that's maybe it's very important to like one organization, one or two, but not broadly impactful. I mean, basically, like the primary goal here is to have this release be equivalent to 1.8 release. So we want it to be a big step forward in quality on against 2.0. It's not realistic to think it's going to be a perfect release and there'll be no issues at all, though, right? Or else the release will never come out. Hi. So.
Is the Lustre 2.1 server
No. We've done. I mean, if it was Red Hat 5 only, the release would have been out 4 or 5 weeks ago. We've tested it on Hyperion, like at scale, on Red Hat 5, and I think we cleared the last blocker that was from Oracle's testing point of view some time ago. Fan Yong actually fixed that, so he's speaking, I think, over the conference. So, hello.
What are the client distributions you're planning to support?
The client distributions?
Will it be others than Red Hat or
yes.
CentOS?
Maybe Oleg could help me out with the full list. Just off the top of my head, I believe we're aiming to support SLES 11, SP1, Red Hat 6, Red Hat 5. I know there's several others. Yeah, sorry, the information is on. We did send it out on the mailing list. I can send you that afterwards. A link to that information.
So we basically build, test, and probably will test on our testing system on Ubuntu, Fedora 14, just to have a taste of the newer kernels. Then the Red Hat 6, Red Hat 5. And if you want actually anything else, you might be able to talk to us and we will add a build. Well, you will need to provide a build slave to us and we will build on this architecture and you will be able to run the tests. So the patchless clients, which is all about clients, should work on nearly any kernel.
Right. So yeah, basically with the whole testing, we had the, I mean, at the time we started this initiative, Whamcloud's test cluster was sitting in boxes. It wasn't even installed. So we've basically been, building up the test infrastructure as we've been going along. So we prioritized the sort of, the clients we knew that were being used by those who have been most actively involved in the testing and development, but there's still potential to extend that. So if you've got some other requirement, yeah, we're happy to hear about it. Okay.
Any more questions for Peter? Peter, thanks.
Okay, thanks everyone.